start from you. So perhaps we'll just start with you telling us maybe one thing that stood out for you yesterday. Maybe just 3 people can just tell us one thing they learned, a new thing that you learned as a result of yesterday's conversations. Just 2 or 3 people can just share with us. And in addition, you can just, if you can, remember maybe if the workshop name. Yesterday we mentioned our workshop names, right? So if you can also try to remember your colleague's workshop name, that would also make it interesting. All right, so would anyone like to share their highlights from yesterday's session? I mean, the highlight yesterday was mainly the debate session that we had yesterday where we looked at 4 different areas. The first area was how, as NGOs or CSOs, we are able to translate capacity building into institutional building to ensure the sustainability of our NGOs, right? Okay, and then the second session, I think, was on how NGO accountability increases your legitimacy, right? Okay, and the third session, I believe, was on how, as NGOs, we are carrying out program evaluation and documenting our results and how that is making our NGOs more successful. And then the fourth area, of course, was how as NGOs we are identifying our stakeholders and influencing our stakeholders and how that is helping our project management, right?
Yesterday, it was something I wanted to say but slipped away from me, and that is the sincerity that came from the RGR that spoke. That it's not about it's new. When funders request for a progress report, they wanted the truth, and that is to say exactly where you think that has impacted the organization, and that you had something going before you were mapped into being a part. It was something I even wrote in a report to Shay sometime in January when you requested a progress report. Rapper has been for over 20 years. We have a huge network that are all impacting us. However, this is the area where we can say this is what brought this progress in Rapper. Thank you very much.
And I work with Disability Rights Advocacy Center. I'm actually the founder of Disability Rights Advocacy Center. And I think we also were one of the earliest partners of the EU Act in at least in Abuja. I don't know about other states, at least in the FCT, I do believe we were one of the very, very early organizations that the EU Act started to work with. And, for us, it's also all gratitude to EU Act, because at the time we came on board, we were just looking for more grants to add to what we already had. So we were so sure that, okay, EU Act, they are calling themselves, they are all about capacity building, but the bottom line for us was bring the money. We just bring the money, let's continue doing the work we're doing. But every time they will call us, it's about one capacity building thing or the other. At some point I will tell my team members, is it those people again? You should go. When they are ready for the money, call me. So, but then each time they come back, everybody is raving. Oh, they taught us this, they taught us that, And I wouldn't say we did not have any structures on ground. We did. However, one area we were seriously lacking in was in proper documentation and publishing of our work. So after the training on knowledge management, that training was a hybrid training. So it was both online and it was physical. I was online. And the first few minutes of the training, or the first few hours of the training, I thought I was an expert. And then I began to realize that I didn't know anything, or we were not doing enough as an organization to properly document our work and share learnings with other people and other organizations. And that was like a turning point for us in DRAC, because we realized that we've done so much for the disability inclusion agenda, for disability rights, gender, and all of that. But we didn't have anything to show for it. And so many people still did not know much about what we were doing. And we had done a lot. We have really pulled people, persons with disabilities, out of poverty and done so many other very important things, but there was nothing to show. After that training, we began to ask ourselves some hard questions. Are we doing enough? Are we taking what we're doing and learning from it and reapplying it into future projects and all of that? And we began to change the way we work. We first of all looked at one of our staff. Instead of employing a new person, we looked at one of our staff who is very good with documentation and synthesizing learnings, and we made her the knowledge management officer. So her job was to look at, at the time we had like 9 projects running. So we look at all the projects and find a way of harmonizing what we're all doing, all those projects we're doing, getting out the findings, documenting them properly, and reapplying them to future project concepts and all that we're putting in place. And we began to see the kinds of documents, we began to develop manuals, toolkits, important learning resources that we could also share with people, in other projects, and they would benefit from. And I think that also skyrocketed us in terms of our opportunities, because we began to be seen as experts on the issues of disability rights, especially as it concerns women and girls with disabilities. All our researches that we had done were not published. We began to publish all of that, and just so many things, all thanks to what we learned from EU Act. One other thing I want to talk about is we must never get tired of filling all the forms, respond every day. Sometimes it looks like we are in this world just for EU Act. Every day, one email or the other. Every day, have you done this? Every day, will you come for this meeting, come for that meeting? I cannot end this without talking about Sheyi. That lady, I just don't know if everybody can just have that kind of character that woman has. She just does not stop. Even when it's obvious that I'm dodging her phone calls, she will even act like nothing happened. I used to be ashamed of myself sometimes, because I would think she would give up. I thought at some point she would say, these drag people are big. But she would never. Every time she would call, oh, are you okay? Please, we didn't see you. Why? Oh, very nicely, very gently, very lovingly. Then me, I will now be ashamed of myself. I will tell myself, please, next time remind me. I must not miss any of the, I think that is how we should all, relate with each other. There are some funders you work with, and you feel small. You feel diminished as a person, but not this particular group of people. There's the humanity with which they talk with you. Some of you might not understand how we persons with disabilities feel. Sometimes, just because you're an organization of persons with disabilities, some people talk down at us. Some people don't expect anything from us. They have very low expectations of our abilities, and then you keep feeling like the lower person in the relationship. But when these people talk to us, in fact, she makes me feel like I'm her oga. She acts like, she has to, constantly beg me and plead with me to get things done. And it really changed my own mindset in a lot of ways, of what relationships should be between people in positions of power and people who are benefiting from them, and so on and so forth. So for me, I think they also embody and demonstrate good leadership, good relationship management, what partnership should be, almost like equal partnership. And I think we as organizations ought to value those as well. Because sometimes it's not all about getting funding, getting capacity building, but when people also treat you like equal partners, it also goes a long way in helping you achieve your organizational goal and objectives. I mean, there's so much I could talk about, but let me just stop here for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm sure those who have connected very closely with Rabi will say the same thing. Yes. Those who have connected very well with all our SFPs. And this is also part of what I wanted to tell you. If you ask them, what they're saying now, if you ask them what they go through internally, so they cannot act differently other than that. And thank you, guys, that you are reflecting us very, very well. We are really, really well represented. Thank you. And so much also to say. I was just telling my colleagues here that I really wish that if I had anticipated this session this way, I would have brought out a recording. In fact, she was telling me that this is one of the sessions that we should have brought EU representative here. We also have a gap to respond to, which is EU. So every good thing that you are saying now is not for us; it's for EU to hear. And so we will try as much as possible to document this and bring it to the attention of EU. The very strong reason, very top on the agenda of why EU is funding this program is because of the fact that they felt civil society organizations are not accessing opportunity from them more. And so they were looking at the opportunity, a situation where they can support directly. So if they call for applications, call for proposals and all of that, what they get in return, if they are not satisfied with it, and they thought, how can we contribute to the package this program to respond? So some of the experiences that are being shared here today demonstrate that we are in that direction, and that gives me opportunity. So also, whether you have gotten, like Afsat said earlier on, whether you have gotten grant from EU Act or not, please take the capacity building process very seriously. We weren't going to do EU. We weren't going to do grants. It was at the time that we were engaging with you. In fact, some organizations that we engaged with at the beginning, they said, "What is on the table? Sorry, no money. Forget us." And we did not struggle with them. But we thought that as the process went on, how can we demonstrate? If you see how much money that we says that, for example, got, it's less than 3 million naira from ACT. I think the biggest organization that probably got grant from ACT is not up to 50 million naira. 50 million naira is not equal to $86,000 that an organization that is sub-mentee got. So that is the power of the idea is for us to be able to run that, okay, some of the capacity that we are giving these organizations, bring us a proposal in an area that you are working with. Let's, put in this little amount and see how you can, improve on it. And I'm glad that that risk is worth taking for us. And that is what we want to be reporting to the EU. You have entrusted us to take this risk. We have taken this risk with a number, and we have seen this result. Of course, everything is not perfect. We know that there are still quite a number of areas that we probably, on our own, that we need to address, on your own, that we need to keep addressing. But we are gradually getting there. So, and I'm glad. I just want to appreciate you, even our partners, because even if we have all the ideas, we have all the money, and there is nobody to work with, then what are we going to be talking about? So thank you very much for that.
Mufarka Youth Development Initiative. Mufarka is one of the youngest emerging CSO in Kano that is at local level, unlike the other CSOs that are all here. Yeah. Before EU, we had many problems, but after it, we learned a lot, and that made many difference in our organization. Before, we don't have what we call internal control mechanism or internal control system. But now, with the coming of EU, we have tried to check our management team and see how we can be able to develop an internal control system. And that is even the reason of why I am here. Because our executive director is like trying to step down and to serve as only advisor to the organization and develop other management team members to serve as the EDs and in several other capacities in order to make the organization more active and reliable and also focus on its areas of education, peace, and empowerment. We also don't have many, like I can say, policies, because most of our works are voluntary work, and that makes us to develop what we call volunteer policy. And that policy helps us really in recruiting more volunteers in most of our activities that we do. And even that helps us in working with other organizations like Isawali Development Initiative, which most of their works that they do, they used to like partner with us because we are working at the local level. So they do come to us, we do support them with our volunteers, they work with them and things like that. This is really an achievement. Not only Isawali, like DAC and so many other organizations that are presently here. Apart from that, there is this issue of compliance. Before we don't have team, we don't have SCOOM, we don't have so many things. But now we have all of those documents. For the issue of sustainability, though we did not get any grant from EU, but Alhamdulillah, we are like doing what you call step-down training to other community-based organizations that are mostly working at local government level or even at times at ward level. And that is really impacting and making progress in their engagement at community level. And lastly, what should we improve? By giving confidence and appreciating applicants of a grant, even if they are not successful. For instance, we happen to be part of that consortium with our father, Dr. Mustafa, is here. We spent about 6 months trying to put a proposal together, but 6 months, yeah, but 6 months, yes, but we are not successful. Actually, we are, I cannot say we are not happy, yeah, but I think it is good to like develop confidence in us, even if you fail, so that we can be able to solve our challenges. And lastly, timely release of, what can I say, like, not per diem only, even transport. At times when you come to art program, maybe it will take you up to 3 months before you receive your TVs and other things like that. I know it is in the mind of everyone here, but you may not say it. So as a local organization that we don't have enough, so I say it on behalf of you. Thank you.
It was the fact that I got to hear persons from other CSOs share how they implemented, how they've used some of the trainings from EU Act. Specifically, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting the name of the organization. Isawa. Okay. Isawali. So she kept talking about how when they go back, they have a template already to share what they learned, and so it can be used. But what struck me the most was that you are encouraged to learn other things and then conduct voluntary learnings and conduct step-down trainings. You mentioned some other things I wrote down, and I'm going to take it back to my organization and see how that's something we can put in place to institutionalize all of these learnings. So that was the highlight for me yesterday.
So much. Any other person wants to say anything? Okay? All right, thank you. So we're making good progress. Even though nobody remembered the workshop name of their colleague. I remember one person's name because that stuck with me for one reason or the other. Oracle. Who is Oracle here? Oracle. That stuck yesterday. All right. Sorry? Support. Oracle. Support.
And honey.
And who?
They said honey. Somebody's name was honey.
King James. Any other name? High Excellency.
Pepper
Okay.
soup.
Sorry? Masses first.
Unique.
Unique. Okay. Okay. And some just wanted to be called simply Dami, simply Martha, simply. Okay. All right. So we'll just go very quickly into the events of the day. We have a good lineup of activities, lineup for the morning session today. And then, of course, in the evening, we're going to have our grand finale with the dinner and comedy and cultural nights. I will tell my colleagues here that we have, for the dinner this evening, that we have an all-white dress code. We would tell them. They didn't get the memo. We would tell them. They didn't get the memo. But we have an all-white dress code. And funny enough, my colleague and I did not even discuss it. You know, when FCT colleagues decided that we wanted to show up in our white attires, we decided that a long time ago. And then yesterday I found out that our Kano colleagues also came ready in white, which means a very divine orchestration.
Wahala day.
So this night is going to be something else.
It's a divine arrangement.
Honestly. We're going to look like what?
Angel.
Doves. Because white stands for purity and everything good. All right, so we're all going to look very lovely this evening during our comedy and cultural night. I'm looking forward to that event particularly. I've been waiting and dreaming about that event. Please, just don't be like me. Don't be like me. I tried to iron my dress this morning and I burnt it. Not to worry, not my white dress. No, that one is safe. Not my white dress. The dress I was supposed to wear this morning. While ironing it, I burnt it. But thank God I still had something to make up. So don't be like me. Just iron very gently. Very gently.
I almost burnt my white too.
Please. No weapon. No weapon of the enemy will prosper.
It will work.
It will not work. All right.
So now we will go into the group presentation. Please, this time we're going to be sure that we keep to time, because after that there's one other thing that Tolashe needs to do, and from there we will close. The reason we always push tea break on day 2 to the closing time is because we said there will be no lunch. So people would be able to, but that does not mean if you want to get your lunch at your expense, you cannot get it. But we always like to do that so that people would just take their tea break and go to their rooms. So I don't know how to do that type of Golden Globe introduction that Sheyi does, but I'll just say that let me hand the microphone to Tolashe. Oh yes, I don't know the sophisticated type, but I'll hand over the microphone to Tolashe.
Kano and FCT, Abuja. Who should we start with? Kano.
Abuja now.
We're actually dealing with states. Abuja is not a state, so let's have Kano. Kano is a state.
I protest, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
That is still a case we are fighting.
Where's your placard to start with?
Abuja is a state, and it should be treated as a state, sir.
But not recognized in the Constitution.
I am standing here on behalf of Kano Group. This is our presentation. For the citizen engagement strategies, we have town hall meetings and community advocacies. This is in relation to engaging people at the grassroots to participate in whatever the civil society and of course on policy issues and community issues. Then there are advocacies that for civil society in Kano also did in terms of reaching out to citizens to give them the right platform to engage on policy and other developmental issues. Under this strategy, a number of EU acts have conducted advocacies and town hall meetings. For example, Ocean have conducted advocacy with Ministry of Budget and Planning in order to establish the right protocol for engaging with MDS in Kano State. Because Ministry of Budget and Planning is the right institution that do facilitate and coordinate the activities of all government agencies, be it in the health sector, education, water, agri, and the rest. And other partners also have done that. Then we also have community dialogues and meetings. This is very, very important. There are certain issues that we do advocate under intervention with the EU Act that required organizing community dialogue. For example, FOCO, Friends of Community, they have organized this kind of community dialogue. YEDA also have done that with young people and other communities. And then the issue of sensitization is another strategy of reaching out to citizens to make sure that they have the right knowledge and information for them to engage in public debates and policy decision makings. Then the issue of public hearing, as we know, some of us were working with citizens in order to increase their participation in public policy decisions. This involved the issue of budgeting process, shaping how Kano State policies are being developed. So this public hearing are also another way of citizen engagement. A number of EU partners in Kano State participated in Kano State public budget hearing, and they have given their inputs. And in doing that, we organized a large number of citizen groups in Kano State to take part in that. Then we also have organized some focus group discussions as part of the citizen engagement in order to tap into the knowledge of the citizens on how they perceive some of the policy issues that we are dealing with. And this greatly helped us to make sure that the engagement is so coherent, and we have given the people the right platform and information for them to give us their own inputs. Then also trainings and capacity buildings. There are some community intervention and citizen groups that really required some capacity building for them to be fully engaged in these programs and of course to engage with the government. So a number of us, we organize capacity building. For example, Ocean, we organize capacity building for civil society organization in order to engage with government. We organize for women champions, girls and adult women in order to engage at community level, to sensitize and mobilize women to take part in public policy debates and decisions in Kano State. So these are some of the strategies we all adopted in Kano State in terms of citizen engagement. Next. For the government engagement strategies, we have advocacy. I have started mentioning some. Advocacy is one of the key strategies for any meaningful, engagement with the government, because we need to reach out to these policy makers in order to have their buy-in into our programs. A number of advocacy visits have been conducted by EU partners in Kano State, and because we know that this project is trying to bring out some new initiatives, new ideas. So we are not doing it as business as usual. For example, we bring out the issue of collective ownership, making the government officials, the policy makers to own the initiative, so that at any point in time they can be easily mobilized to partake in our meetings. And this advocacy really helped us, and it is part of the thought that we learned from the EU Arts training. We need to do something different from the usual way of doing it. The issue of policy dialogues. Policy dialogues has greatly helped us in delivering this project. Ocean have organized a number of policy dialogue where we have the co-ownership of the initiatives. You have Ministry of Budget and Planning that is heading and coordinating the participation of all other agencies. FOCO did that, YEDA did that. YEDA, I remember when they are about to organize their own events, in fact, they reached out to the Kano State government, and the Kano State government own it and have the event at the government house. This is all part to create the ownership through policy dialogue with government officials, because they are the ones that really implementing the policies. We need to engage them through a a very receptive manner. Then the issue of legislative engagement. This is also a very critical way of engaging government. There are certain areas that requires policy and legislation. And Kano partners, we reach out to legislators in Kano State to have their buy-in. And that is as a result of that, many of us are always in their roll call when it comes to maybe sending information for public hearing or any debates as related to Kano State policies and legislations. This has yielded a lot of results. Then the issue of policy briefs. For example, crisis, they are good in doing that. When they have, there are issues, burning issues around maybe education, or to do with girl child education, or to do with issue of almajiri, they normally develop policy briefs that are always been in circulation for the government and other civil society to look at it, to have an informed mind in the areas where we can do much better in those areas. Then the issue of partnership and collaboration. This, we always emphasize on that. Government and civil society need to collaborate because at some point we are just complementing each other. It's only in some few instances that you can see that we are advocating for new things, or maybe we are so aggressive because there are areas, not all the time the relationship is smooth and cordial, because we are serving the citizens. At times we need to be aggressive with the government to make sure that we hold them accountable. But in most cases, the partnership and collaboration is the key words when it comes to engaging with the government, and I believe it has given us the right results in Kano, as most of the partners attested to during our discussions. Next. Then on the navigating for the regulatory environment, there are a number of organizational capacity assessments conducted by ACT. This is really the opening eye for us. Many of us, we don't have that requirements, or we have them halfly or partially, but with the coming of ACT, through our OCAT, Organizational Capacity Assessment, we identify those areas that we need to do a lot better, we need to improve, and as a result of that, the OCAT result is serving with us as a reference point. We always check it. How much do we have and how much we need to have? And that's the basis of our regulatory, compliance with the regulatory environment. Then the other regulatory agencies and compliance that we have been consistently engaging and trying to comply with their requirement as with the CAC. On the issue of SCOML, many of us before the coming of ACT program, we don't register with SCOML. And, but as a result of that, we have now resisted, many of us, I believe, and we are trying to also comply with the registration requirement and the compliance. This is another way of dealing with SCOML. I know many of us who have visited their offices in terms of submitting some reports requirements, and then the issue of MRS and KRS. I believe now majority of us, we are doing what is right, more especially on paying withholding tax and pay as you earn, as evidently shown in our reporting with the EU Act. Then on the issue of Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit, these are invisible, agencies that we don't know at what point they are looking at us, but we are fully aware they are engaging with our banks to make sure that what we are doing is in line with the requirement of the issue of money transfer, and we are doing it within the limit. Then the issue of FENCOM, which is recently, surpassed for many of us, like Caution. We discussed, some ACT members are already conversant with it. So we are learning from each other, and it's another area that we are engaging. Then the government agencies, Ministry of Health, Women Affairs, Community Development, Department, Youth Development, or Ministry of Youth, these are another entities that do also regulate because they have requirement for registration. Many of us, we have done this registration, more especially on those partners that are dealing with specific sectors, health, youth, education. They are conversant with this process, but there are some of us that once they have their CAC, they don't look at this, but we consider them as part of the regulatory agency, even though they don't have any enforcement right in terms of making sure that we comply with their requirements. Next. On gender and social inclusion, we are now strongly working with the Ministry of Women Affairs on gender mainstreaming in public policy. To be honest, Ministry of Women Affairs now is like a kind of very conservative in Kano State. Being the lead of the ministry is a former commissioner from the HISBA board, and she doesn't know much. She doesn't have much knowledge about what gender and social inclusions are. So she's very, very protective of that agency. But we are pushing. Recently, Ocean, we brokered a deal with them. They come around for a policy dialogue in order to look at what can we do in terms of domestication of national gender policy in Kano State. And many partners of the EU are part of that policy dialogue. And we agreed we need to start looking at situational analysis, because that's the idea. They don't want to embrace the whole national gender policy because of the, some sensitive areas. So we agreed now unanimously to have like a kind of discussion around how we can source funding to conduct situational analysis. Areas that are sensitive to Kano people can be, moved out or changed to other ones. So this is, I think the ACT program also gave us that opportunity, because we did that policy dialogue with the support of EU ACT grant. Then putting in place organizational gender policy. Many of us, before the ACT program, we don't have gender-specific policy. Even though in our policies you can see there are some headlines that talks about gender, mainstreaming and the rest, and social inclusion. But now we felt we have to have a separate policy that is dealing with gender and social inclusions. And many of us, we have it now. And thanks to EU ACT supports. Then the issue of persons with disability, youth and women groups, inclusion. I think we are doing great in this aspect. For Yeda, they are dealing with young people. Peter is also dealing with young people and other marginalized communities in Kano State, more especially the ethnic minorities. For Ocean, we are dealing with the women champions who are also providing technical support at grassroots level, mobilizing women and girls to take part in the policy decisions and to take part in educating community about their rights to education, more especially girls. Then on the issue of engagement, we are doing a lot in that capacity. Recently, Kano Civil Society Forum, they organized a platform wholly for women in order to engage them, strengthen their capacity to participate in the political debates and demanding for positions and other important positions in the political space. Then on the issue of strategy, we have what we call stakeholders mapping, because at times, if you want to be gender and social inclusion sensitive, you need to have the breakdown of your target audience. If not, you allow it just to happen like that, it will not. You must have a deliberate action to make sure that in your mapping you identify the right people, you allocate the right resources, you identify the right numbers that will make sure that you are gender and socially inclusive in your program design. Then the identification of socially excluded group. At times, this is also, it needs to be a deliberate, not just to happen by itself. We have to do that, and we are doing that. Then the issue of capacity building around these areas is something that we have been doing, many of us. I learned from other partners that are working around these issues. The issue of advocacy in order to propagate and to advance the issue of gender and social inclusion. Recently in Kano State, disability law is on the process. I believe Kano State Civil Society Forum are championing that cause, and organization of the Bilkisu Ado are also part of that process, and all are part of the EU supports. Next. Then on the media engagement, let me start with the very commendable effort by EU Act for establishing the kind of partnership relationship we have, CS and media. This is the first of its kind in Kano State. And I believe in about 3 weeks ago, we have developed the state action plan that paved way for us to have an action plan that will guide how civil society and CS can work together harmoniously without, the kind of relationship we had before. Sometimes we are accusing each other. We accuse them for taking money from us. They accuse us for not respecting them or inviting them as just an ordinary participant, or invite them to cover for events, not as participant. So this kind of relationship now is now being improved, and we really appreciate our action plan. We have about 4 items to deliver, and we are working on that. And then on the other areas, we have a number of advocacy visits. Even the dialogue we have is part of the advocacy. And there are other platforms in which civil society, EU Act partners are reaching out to media organizations to advocate for them so that we can have relationships that will not only build based on monetary. Then the strategies of doing that is make sure that we have good coverage and report. Not necessarily to report what we are doing, but to give it the right story that it deserves. We are not cooking anything, but we always want them to give us the right story based on the impact of our activities. Then the press releases and conferences, we always do that. Crisis, I know they are good in doing that. Ocean 2, we issue press release, and the people that really carry those press releases are the media organization, media communiques, jingles, and interviews. We have been invited to pre-air time to do interviews with the media organizations, even though it's a mutual benefits for them. They have the topic they want to discuss, and for us, we need the space to discuss what we know. So it's a kind of mutual benefit. Then the issue of hashtags, these are electronic means of communicating, articles and live streaming, which we are also all doing in order to push forward this kind of engagement with media organizations. I think this is the last, right? Thank you.
For the FCT and EU Act CSOs here. So following the thematic areas, I'm not going to run through. I won't bother to read line by line. So in terms of yesterday we met, we had a brainstorming, and then immediately formed the WhatsApp group, and we also shared the Google link for organizations to send in examples so that they can, harmonize together for us to present something to you. Okay, very quickly. So when it comes to citizen engagement, we all are in collective agreement that citizens need to be engaged in our various interventions, and that this is very useful, one, for effective delivery, and also you want to ensure that whatever you're delivering on, meets the needs of the citizens. So right from the point of project design to project implementation, we agree that citizens should be engaged at that level. But oftentimes, one of the things you also discover is that sometimes you are constrained by the kind of the grants guidelines. Sometimes you don't have the leverage to actually, engage citizens at a very local level. You just sit in your office and you begin to, develop proposals based on some context ideas that you have. But we agree that the EU Act has actually helped us, and then we see the need for them to come in at the project design stage, right up to implementation, and even till the point where we are even doing the monitoring and evaluation for results. We also agree that, yes, for some of the citizens, for some of the CSOs in our midst, it has enhanced the visibility of their project. So rather than just talking from the point of what we have done, we are also giving opportunities for citizens to make their own contribution. And such is some of the things that donors again like to see. How has their project impacted on citizens? Hearing the citizens speak is something that we feel that has impacted on the EU project, and has also given them a sense of ownership. Again, key examples from the group. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, that of the 2021, one of the ways through which we engaged citizens was through media awareness for public sensitization. Another was to curb this issue of vaccine hesitancy and also getting more people vaccinated and also getting them aware of what COVID-19 actually is. A lot of conspiracy theories were woven around that period, but by virtue of the interventions some of us in the consortium were able to undertake, we brought citizens up to speed on their role in preventing COVID-19. And beyond the citizens, we also looked at from the angle of inclusion as well. So people with disabilities, how were they able to engage at the level of the Disability Act? Because the Disability Act, when it started, my own view is that CSOs were driving it. So you didn't have public awareness. But for those who are ordinary citizens or public citizens and have some kind of disability, how do they factor in the whole gamut of pushing the agenda of the Disability Act? So these are some examples. I've talked about the needs assessment for citizens as well. Then still on the issue of inclusion, we also took time within our project implementation and how the EU Act has helped us to see how women and adolescent girls, for instance, this is a peculiar group that we often miss out in development intervention, but yet there's a greater call for their inclusion in development programs. So our intervention is also making us to understand the plight of women, the plight of young girls in terms of maybe education, access to education, in terms of women empowerment, bringing them to be part of the development intervention, peculiar groups as it were. Then I move right to the government engagement. You will agree with me that when you are undertaking intervention, no matter the level, whether it's at the national or the subnational level, local level, it's important that you get the government buy-in. And everybody agreed to that fact that you need government buy-in for the success of that project. And also to give them, so what it does for the government is that it also gives them a good outlook, for want of a better word, that they are part of a development intervention that ensures that the government is talking with the people, is working with the people. So we agree that engaging with relevant government stakeholders is very important to project cycle. I want to give a very short example. So I implemented, not necessarily EU Act, I'm sorry. So I implemented a project that had stiff resistance from security agencies, and that project was on civil military relations. We were just speaking within ourselves, and we were having blockage at the point of entry into the various security institutions. What we did at that point was to get a steering committee member. Within the steering committee, you had somebody that had insider access into the institution. If we had not thought outside the box and put that structure in place, we might not have been able to get access. And what it did for us was, the moment we got the military on board, they became like the flag bearer, because it was also putting them in a good light on the international scene. So CSO agreed that yes, working with the government and also using this as advocacy tool in terms of engagement, the various issues that we're all working with. At the different levels, again, not only at the executive, at the legislative level, we're also mindful that it's important to work with the legislature. For instance, the EU Act is doing a lot around regulatory environment, and we'll come to that shortly. How are we able to regulate ourselves? How are we able to comply with the various laws and the frameworks that you have if you're not speaking, if you're not engaging with the government? I particularly, somebody said that yesterday, but I particularly enjoyed the session where they brought pension to get on board, they brought CAC, they brought different agencies, and somebody said that sometimes if you're CSO, you can't invite those people and they will not come because they sort of see themselves as elitists. So the fact that we are getting government buy-in is very important across level, and even for the Kama bill, the amendment 1, that you had CSO make their intervention on the floor, there were certain CSO that were also working at the level of the legislature to ensure that you get some buy-in and how this will impact on the sector positively. So, in terms of getting the government stakeholder on board, this is very important for us. One of our group members was able to also create an advocacy technical team, which again is similar to the example in terms of steering committee that we have brought on board. Capacity building of the government is equally very important, because sometimes you put them in these positions, they may not have the required skills to be able to discharge what you expect of them. So in my own view, civil society come with a rich repository of knowledge to work with these persons in terms of promoting accountability, transparency, and for them to take ownership of some of this responsibility. So I think that this is very important. We've talked about inclusion. How is the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, for instance, going about in terms of carrying women along across board, and in terms of children engagement. A lot of civil society, when I listen here, have one or two things to do at the grassroots level, and this is where you have a large chunk of vulnerable groups being impacted on our program. And I come to regulatory environment. So we agreed again that what the EU Act has done is to ensure that citizens, or CSOs rather, go back to the drawing board. And I will say that for the Clean Foundation. Yes, for Clean Foundation, this is 24 years. It's a very old or matured civil society organization, but there's a need for you to check and recheck. So by virtue of the various questions that EU Act kept asking, various trainings, it also comes back to us at the management level. We kept asking questions. How are we complying with SCUMUL, with the various frameworks that is expected for us to comply with? We are asking ourselves serious questions and ensuring that at least talked about media engagement and partnership. Civil society were collaborating within themselves, organizing, and also organizing with the media, because we needed the media to push our voice forward. So it's one of the things that the EU Act has done, and the alliance that has been forged both within the EU Act and outside has broadened the civil society horizon about the bill. Some of us were able to also step down certain aspects of the KAMA bill to other NGOs that needed that hand-holding across the process. So you also have civil society organizations that, particularly at the local level, registering with the various regulatory frameworks at their level. For instance, when we started, there was this EU Act on election prior to the 2019 general election. I understand that you will need to register with the Ministry of Budget and National Planning. Those things were not there. The idea of those things were not there. But as a result of what the EU Act is doing, people are getting that conscientization to be in compliance with the various laws that you have. Gender and social inclusion, you cannot overemphasize this at any level, at the policy level, the program, and the practice level. And as a whole, we have been trying to push that agenda in FCT. So you have people, whether you're working around disability issues, you are constantly looking out for social inclusion issues, you're constantly looking out for gender. I'm rounding up, sorry. Yeah. Gender issues, and then one of the CSOs was able to create, as a result of a training, the GEZI training, which I benefited and some other colleagues in my organization. An organization created a department for gender and social inclusion to support the agenda mainstreaming within the organization. So the idea is that we are not leaving anyone behind in our intervention at any level. Rounding up now, media engagement and partnership, we agree that yes, working collaboratively with the media, both traditional and the new media, is very key to project implementation. What the media does for you is that for audience that you are not able to reach, you can, once you partner with a media organization, the reach is far above your expectation. So, and you're able to create that impact across the globe. Some of the members have also taken initiative to create a WhatsApp group. Yes, this is a best practice. We also do it in our organization. So the idea is that you're bringing media groups together to form a WhatsApp group. So as a CSO under EU Act, you have an intervention, you have done any activity as the case may be, you are pushing that information or the report, press releases. That becomes a key group that you're able to push your information out there and people are running with it. Let's not forget the fact that these media partners also don't work in silos. At their various levels, they have their own network. So the reach is going beyond what you have initially thought about. At the level of Clean Foundation, our communication staff officer attended a couple of EU Act training. One of the things she is doing for us is yes, at Clean we have a communication strategy, but after that training, what she is doing for us is for every project that comes that we are writing, developing proposals, or we have won grants, we are trying to develop project-specific communication plan for such projects.
Breakout session, I've just been reminded that there's been a slight tweak or change to the agenda. We're going to have the plenary, which is us trying to get feedback from you on how, by engaging with the ACT program, by partnering with the ACT program, what has that led to for your organization? What difference has it made? What value has been added to you? What's that unique selling point that we have brought on board? So we would like to hear from you. So for that session, I'd like to invite very able ACT M&E advisor, Mr. Ilya Ambi. Please, a big round of applause as he comes forward for this session. Let me take the mic to him.
Shay, you are too kind, and you are making me ashamed already. Okay, good morning all. For our Kano colleagues, I hope we rested well. Great. So someone told me that you guys left here around 9 o'clock or past 9 yesterday. But all the same, we're all here now, and we just want to go through this plenary session to be able to, discuss among ourselves and bring out some very unique, just like she said, points based on your engagement with the ACT program. We know that you have been engaging with quite a lot of international development partners, before now. But for us, we just want to discuss among ourselves so that we can be able to identify and articulate what are those great and interesting things that we could, that you have learned from us and that we have also learned from you. So we will do it like this. During the breakfast in the morning, I was discussing down in the restaurant with my very good friend, Jack Ebele. I met him under some very unique and coincidental, circumstances in Abuja for the first time, and since then we started talking, and it has been great. So this is where we are. Plenary. Through your engagement with the ACT program, we would like to go through these 3 points, including especially for those of our partners that have received our grants and they are implementing. We would just like to go through this to know what has your experiences been like, as a result of your engagement with us. So deliberately, I must say, I would like to give Jake the microphone to start with because of some very unique conversations we had downstairs, and I told him that I would like for him to re-echo those points so that as a very good way to start, any other person that's going to respond after him will model on some of the things he has said and then be able to also articulate or make their points as well. So Jake, I know you're for you as a CSO because that is what speaks for you. When other donors or, if you like, development partners come to do their own due diligence in your organization before signing any MOU and stuff with us. So the more you continue to do that, the more you continue to practice that, the more you continue to adopt that, you discover that it becomes your way of life. It becomes something that promotes and enhances your credibility as an institution. My father used to say that even the good book said that a good name, right, is better than riches. Okay, so if we continue to do that,
kickstarting this process. My name is Jake Epele. I'm the CEO and founder of the Albino Foundation. Sincerely, Albino Foundation, despite the fact that we have reasonable visibility. We were just visible, but not as impactful as we had wanted. And one day, the ACT program people walked in and began to ask us some very pertinent questions. Okay, you have a board. How many board meetings do you have in a year? I said, our board meeting maybe once a year, once in 2 years, So, okay, so tell us the process by which you engage your board. And I thought I was smart and looking good. By the time I finished, they quietly said to me, well, you have a board, but the engagement is neither here nor there. So you need to, and then they sat down and gave us a few tips. And we decided to implement. And one of them was, I'm starting with my board because you're as good as your board. One of them was to see the gender balance within the board. Another thing was to see how many persons with disability are in the board. The third was to see the regional representation of the board. I'm from South. You see all South people. How can you claim that you are diverse and yet you have a well-structured, tilted board? Anyway, that opened our eyes, and we have restructured the board, brought in more diverse board members. We are engaging. Right now we have, even during the pandemic, we didn't miss the dates that we have structured for our board meeting. We have to do virtual board meeting. Now, in terms of the board, I would like to share one common but very impactful experience. We had this contract to give, and by reflex, I didn't even remember that as the CEO, I cannot do more than 5 million, and we somehow, that's not me, that's our just one. Somehow, I took the matter to the board because this time it was 28 million naira contract for data. So I went to the board, went through all the process, and the interesting thing is that contract ran into a problem. First, so you don't mind that, let me stand up, please. Yeah. My brothers and sisters, the first thing was that the person I was going to give the contract, who was my classmate, had called me and said, what do you want? I said, what do you mean, what do you want? He said, what do I build into the contract? I told him, you've lost your mind. Please. In fact, I threatened him that if he tells me that again, he will not get the contract. And because of that, I went through, and that's the standard anyway, I went through all the process. Had internal committee to vet what he was doing, then had external committee, friends who are experts in data gathering, they went through, and then I took it to the board. When I went to the board, my chairman, Professor Vin Anibog, drilled me. He told me, go back, come back to us with assessment of everybody that applied for this job, not just the person that you are awarding the contract. Come back to us with assessment. So we did all the assessment. Now, I know I spent like 2 minutes. Finally, here's the thing. By the time the contract ran into problem, because he didn't do the job, obviously, he went to a hotel, sat down, and thinking that he would write me a beautiful report. And when the thing came, I knew it was a problematic report. I looked at him, asked him some questions. We gave him 10 million naira to hire respondents and all that. And I told him, I said, give me the list of the people you hired. That was where the problem started. Anyway, bottom line, when I saw that there was an issue, I went to EU, who were funding me, and reported the matter. I said, the contract that we gave her, and the first question they asked me is, did you follow the process? And I said, yes. He said, now tell me, what process did you follow? So I told them everything and told them the fact that the policy that ACT helped me to unbundle, in that policy, we had stated the process. So they read the policy and then came back and asked me, tell me what process. I told them. By the time I finished, they said to me, cancel the contract, report to EFCC, and go to court if you have to. Because the thing about the EU is willing to spend 3 million euros pursuing you to account for 3,000 euros. And okay, bottom line, we're in court, EFCC has come in, and they followed through all the processes. And of course, that has given EU the assurance that their money is in safe hands. So I'm saying that this project has impacted us organizationally. We have become a stronger organization from a struggling with revenue. Right now we're doing 60% in our revenue base in terms of projects. We have gone from 18 staff to 35. And the last thing that we did that is very unique was when the EU asked us to do an internal assessment of our organization. I want to report that this is not plagiarism, but what I did was to use the same tool that I have learned. As a matter of fact, I wasn't in the workshop. It was my colleagues that were in the workshop that came back, and because when you come back from a workshop just like this one, I will have to go back and everybody will sit down and I'll tell them what I learned from the workshop. So one of the tools that they learned, I can't remember the particular workshop, we used it and did our assessment, stress test, and pointed out honestly where our weaknesses lies. And the European Union decided that they will give us funding for 3 years to hire head of finance, head of HR, M&E, auditors, one more. I think these 4 key staffs. And I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, some of them on that project earns better than me. Each of them on a month, the least is 400,000. The most is 700, 800,000. They wanted to pay them to support us. If we hadn't a good board, if we didn't show a good organization capacity, if we didn't show a good management of funds, I like the fact that every now and then Anne will prune us. You didn't submit this, you didn't submit that, and all that. And I think on the final notes, one of the things that they're also accusing us of, I'm brought to you so that I can give you the money. One of the things that they are, them are accusing us of, you don't spend all your money.
The good thing that you have gained from your interaction with us. So talk about that level of sustainability. Now, you should also talk to us about what do you think institutionally you would like to improve on. And what do you think we as ACT we need to work on improving from our end? And for those of us who are implementing grants, tell us a little bit about your experience with that level of implementation. So who would like to take the next baptism of fire? Oh, Sakefa. Thank you very much.
For that wonderful presentation. We really learned a lot. Now for us in Sakefa, let me just give an overview how we started. Initially, when we got the information, we decided to use one of our members because Sakefa is a membership organization, and these are one of the things our members leverage to being a member of the coalition. So moving forward, Sheyi was like, no, so many things are coming on. No, Sakefa has to do that. Because Sakefa at the HQ, we've assessed funding over $500 and all that. So this one now is something we need to give to our members to do, because we felt that it's not quite good for us to monitor. But at the end, it still end up at the National Secretariat. Thank God it happens that way. If not, the British Council would have jailed us. And what was different was we've implemented a whole lot of projects with so much funding. But EU, if we are not prudent enough with EU fund, if you have not been prudent enough in your previous implementation or your previous dealing with donors, EU will humble you. Now, yes, I'll come to that. When we started, because most of us were not in the picture of the proposal development, so when it finally fell to our desk, unfortunately, the acting policy advisor then has left the coalition. So it's now, that's why the discussion yesterday of ensuring that whatever you are doing, make sure that everybody is carried along, so that when you are not there, there will be no vacuum within that organization. So Sakefa is used to, when you are implementing projects, you send money to staff, you send money to donors, people will just give you shabby reports, both programmatic and financial. But EU is not like that. They have their standard. Everything you are doing you must account for it, and there must be this level of transparency. You can imagine us going to the community and asking a community woman to give us an account to pay 2,000 naira for transportation. We felt that there was a time she came to my office. I was telling her that, you see, if we are done with this project, I am not sure we are going to work with the British Council again. And looking at our budget, we find out that we are finding it very difficult, especially in our advocacy. Because advocacy, if you are going for an advocacy and you want the community to abide by it and help you to sustain that project, somehow you need to, it's not lobby, it's not corruption, but you need to make the ground level to say, Chief, this is why we are here and all that. Now, looking at the amount for our advocacy in the community is just 35,000 naira, and that is for the program staff that is going to that community to do that, his transport, refreshments, and all that. Now, how do we now break even going to this community, looking at the 35,000 naira we have that is not even enough for the program staff to go? And we have to sit down. I discussed it with she. Is there anything we can do? He said, no, the grant has been signed. There's nothing you can do. But for us to achieve our goal, we have to find alternative way to make sure that we buy these people in and make sure they support us. Which we did, which we have not been doing. Other projects give us that leverage to source within their fund to do that. But in this case, there was no opportunity for that. Then are we not saying we're not going to do it or we are returning money back to EU? No, we need to bring in our expertise, devise a means to make sure that we have that good relationship with the community and they buy in what we are doing. So that is that. So how will you sustain it? Yes, the sustainability is because of our robust advocacy. Even the chiefs of these three communities has already agreed that even when this project is over, we will be paying the facilitators. So they said we'll be paying for the facilitators. And another thing we did for sustainability, we have our center managers, which is not even part of our proposal. We are even giving them stipends on our own, not even EU Arts funding now. We are giving them stipends to make sure that they monitor with all the CBOs in that community, to make sure that they monitor what is going on in our center and checkmate the facilitators, and they report to us very often. What should be improved? One, EU should be a bit flexible for let me finish. EU should be a bit flexible. Looking at what Oga Jek said, yes, most of the local NGOs, they don't have this capacity. And one thing with us, we don't sit down and look at our budget before approval. Because we've had 10 million, 20 million, we think there is money there. Then when we now come down to implement, we find out that we have already shot ourselves on the leg and there is nothing we can do about that. Thereby encouraging some of these CSOs, no apology for corruption, in the sense that if Sakefa is not that credible and is an organization that has stood a test of time, with the kind of 35,000 naira we are giving to for an advocacy in each of this community, even some of this community had to reach communities and security issues. We can also, being in the system for a very long time, share is report you people wanted, both the program and financial. Some of the organization will sit in the office and give you what you want because they cannot do otherwise. So when these little NGOs are coming, please, let's see how we try as much as possible to listen from their own end and let there be balance, and EU somehow to be a bit flexible in their policies and decisions. Thank you.
Let's clap for that.
EU Act, we normally go for outreaches, but we don't pay attention to people living with disability. So with the coming of EU Act, we started doing general testing and also testing on people living with disability for linkages and viral load suppression at the same time. So how we intend to sustain this is that we have trained like about 20-25 community volunteers that will continue making awareness, testing, and also linking and referring clients to the facility. The objective of this is to achieve viral load suppression, which is U equals to U, undetectable equals to untransmittable. When the viral load cannot be detected in your system, which means you cannot transfer the virus to any other person that is negative. So you being reactive, you being positive, you can actually marry a negative person. So if the viral load in your system is completely down, you can marry somebody who is negative and you cannot be able to transmit that virus to another person. So basically what I think EU Act should improve in is they should look in the area of board members. I think they should try and train board members so that they can know their roles and responsibilities in the organization they are focusing on. That's what I can say.
From Isawali Empowerment Initiative. I am the Monitoring, Evaluation and Learning Officer. So basically, honestly, I would say that engaging with EU Act is more like an organizational awareness or an awakening call for us. So quite alright, we've been doing a lot. So engaging, attending these trainings really help us to realize our vision, our mission, and then the objectives of our organization. So I will honestly say that one of the best things that happened to us is when I attended the advocacy training, which was the first, I think the first engagement we had with ACT. So before, we tend to sit in our organization and think, okay, this is the problem of this particular location, or based on one or two interactions with some people in the community, they will say that, okay, this is our problem, we want you to come to our community, this is what we want, and then we just say, okay, let's write a proposal based on those few information. But when I attended the training, I realized that, okay, there's a need for this situation analysis, problem analysis, needs assessment. So I brought it back to our organization, and then I did a step-down training to others. So since I attended that training, before we go to before we write a proposal, we make sure that we did the situation analysis, the problem analysis, we engage with different people that the elderly ones, the religious, the stakeholders, and even before, like we just engage with only the critical stakeholders, but now we do engage with different categories of people. That's the women, the children, PWDs, young, and like we make sure that we use the socio-ecological model so that everybody is involved. Apart from that, also the gender and social inclusion. Even our attendance sheets we restructured, we developed new ones. So it's not even only me. Like now, whenever we are doing a project or something, I always have that question of so what is next? And then I'm always looking at the sustainability, not only me. So before in our sustainability, also in our projects, we just tend to look at it, okay, after the project, what is going to happen? So sometimes we just think of, okay, the funding. But now we make sure there's this community committees. We make sure that in the beginning of the project, there's this arrangement or agreement. So we are now working with our people in the community, not working for. So like we involve everybody. So just like when we are doing our own education project, we do have facilitators and mentors. So we do ensure that we have our own facilitators, let's say from the city, that's the urban area, and then we also have cascading mentors who are also recruited from the community, where they will be attached to these mentors from the urban area. So they are learning from them so that by the end of the project, at least we have them to continue. And then thinking of, okay, the payment or stipends. Before we used to think, okay, how do we sustain the payment? It means that once the project is over, that's the end of it. But now, like even during our first planning meeting, we say that, okay, this is what we have. What are you going to do as the critical stakeholders? So they will sit and think, and then they will say, okay, this is what we are going to do. This will be our contribution. So sometimes even the payments, they will be the ones that do the payment. So for our sustainability, honestly, we've been, I think I've mentioned some of the way we sustain our projects beyond thinking of the funding. We try to engage with these people at different levels, the structures and everything in the community. So I think I'm also going to talk about the flexibility. So honestly, we are really enjoying our engagement with ACT, but sometimes it's kind of too, should I say, strict. So sometimes like your forms, like you have to think and think which is good for us, but I think you people...
Our forms? Which forms we give you to fill?
No, like, I don't know, online forms and everything, templates, like, it's very good, like, we are really learning a lot because you have to probe and think, but I don't know if you can just make it a little bit flexible. Yes.
Okay, at this point, hello?
Hi.
Now at this point you will go to the specific. So which forms are you referring to? Which templates are you talking about?
No, not really. So I think maybe I'm even talking about, no, I'm talking about like the proposal or the...
I recall when we were having our PEAs and we went to some states and they would tell us, we opened this NGO for many years, not one donor has visited us. No donor will come to your office knocking. You're not unique, you're not better than the 50, 70,000 NGOs that are registered in CAC. See, it is a competition. It is a marketplace of ideas. The best idea gets the most attention. If you continue to see your NGO as something you are doing, one altruistic invention that you have in your community, it will remain that. If you see it as a business, understanding that it is competitive out there and you have to do everything to position yourself to attract the right investors, then your NGO will flourish. The people mentioning 80,000 euros, 1 million euros are doing it. They are getting there not because they are better than everybody in the room, but they are getting there because they are committing a lot into the process, and that is what matters. So ACT grant is not the end all. The end all is still there in future for you, and I'm sure by the time you continue to access other proposals, attempts to write them, one day you will get there. I'm very certain of that. So long as you utilize, and please, learning is continuous. Let it not end with what ACT has provided. Continue to learn on your own as well. So Sorry about the grant. I'm also going to apologize for my
and civic education. Christ said, our engagement with EU acts has really shaped our perspective about a whole lot of issues. Like Ajia said yesterday, Ajia supports. Okay, Ajia supports. Just like she said yesterday, before the coming of acts, Christ has some institutional capacity, but our engagement with acts has really helped us to step up. For instance, before the coming of acts, some of these policies on gender, social inclusion, and all that were there, and thanks to the quality of the board we have in place. However, the first training I went for with EU Act, when I got back to the office and gave my report to the ED, surprisingly, when we convened our board and staff meeting in Abuja last year, December, I saw that all the issues were top on the agenda of the meeting. First was the issue of compliance, then gender mainstreaming and all. And luckily for us, we have competent people on the board. For instance, on our board, we have 2 professors of law and another lawyer. So we had gender experts in the person of Mrs. Ekaite Umo. So all these people came together as members of the board. I want to believe that the ED has briefed them on our interaction with EU Act. So what they did was to guide us. So the professors of law there, they sat down, looked at the camera, and explained our own level of compliance so far. And when we were falling short, they gave express instruction to the ED for us to tidy up, which we did. So on the other area of Skumun, instantly we filed for our registration, and we are getting it now. So why there was some level of capacity before our contact with acts, but it also triggered us to tidy up the loose ends, which we have done, and I must say that we are better off where we are now before our contact with EU acts. And we want to say a very big thank you, because what my ED told me was that despite the fact that we didn't get the grant, he said we cannot afford to break the ties with EU Act. Why? Because the knowledge we are getting there is more important for us than the money. Because look at what it has helped us. Now, I don't need to tell you the impact that has had on the organization. And in the area of mentoring that we also learned from ACT, our current project in Abuja is on that aspect. We are trying to build the capacity of other smaller NGOs to also help them, because we felt EU has to a level built our own capacity, and it's not every NGO in Nigeria that was part of that. We are only privileged to have gained this knowledge. It's not, there are 1,001 NGOs out there that do not have this privilege. Now, how do we spread this now? So we ensure that all the other NGOs that we are mentoring through like the funding we got, and we are our sub-grantees now, we make sure that we were also a little bit strict with the issue of compliance, so as to also help them build their own institutional capacity too. Believing that even after that project has ended, just as our own experience with EU Act is, so will their own experience with Christ also be. So that is like the chain effect of what EU Act is doing here now from the Christ end. So how are we going to sustain it? Yes, just like we say, we keep paying premium on institutional capacity building, which is very, very key. And these contacts have shaped our policy direction, particularly on the area of institutional capacity building. And we are going to work more on that aspect. Now, for what should you do to improve? Just like Mr. Jake said, and the last speaker, when we talk about flexibility, we are not talking about compromising standards. No, they are two different things. Because our interaction with other development partners have shown that being flexible doesn't necessarily mean you have to compromise standards. I will give you an instance. We're running a program with Miserio, and sometimes when in the course of implementing the program, if we have any challenge that allows for any form of alteration, we will not go ahead and alter. No. What we do is we'll write a situation reports based on our M&E feedback, then stating our position and our challenges. We'll mail them. We may even take action on that aspect of the project, pending when we get further directives from them. It's not that we just go ahead and manipulate things. No, we won't do that. We will send a memo to them. These are our challenges. Of course, we are in Nigeria. Sometimes you plan some things. For instance, now, Ajarabi will attest to the fact our flight was scheduled for 9, but we were here by 12 in a minute. That is due to no fault of ours. You understand? So, but such alteration has to be communicated, and you wait till you get feedback and further directive, probably to alter. It's not that we just say, okay, be flexible and allow things go anyhow. No. In being flexible, you don't let down your standards, but try to accommodate genuine reasons why alterations will come up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's clap for him. Okay.
Pass the ball to somebody. Anybody? Please, final side. You can pass the ball. You can do anything you like with the ball. Pass it. All right, thank you. Oh, thank you. That's fine. Thank you. We don't have much time.
So the ball is with me.
He keeps the ball.
Please sit. So, where's the butler? All right. At the count of 3. At the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Please sit. All right. 1, 2, 3. Please sit. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.